Hello, gorgeous. Here to talk about The Hobbit, but not The Hobbit as you know it. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I've watched literally every single year ever since they were released. I mean, I've been wearing Aragorn's Ring of Barahir the entire time I've been doing the show. Plus, I'm wielding Anduril, which, by the way, was reforged by elves from the Shards of Narsil. So yeah, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. And when Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy came out, I really wanted to love them. I mean, I tried really hard. But try as I might, I just couldn't get into them. For starters, I thought the look of them was just totally off. Too bright, too vibrant, too saturated, and too much CGI. Also, the pacing just killed it for me. There never seemed to be any momentum. In the end, I thought taking one book and turning it into 3 movies was a bad idea. They had to come up with a bunch of new stuff that wasn't in the book just to fill out 3 movies, which goes against editor common sense. Less is more. Some of the best films that have ever been made were meticulously, mercilessly cut down for maximum impact. And the Hobbit trilogy, in the words of Bilbo Baggins, felt like butter spread over too much bread. I shrugged and said, oh well. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is still a masterpiece, and I'll just watch that. And the people who like the Hobbit films can watch those over and over again. And I thought that was the end of the Hobbit for me. But then along came Dustin Lee of Maple Leaf Films. Now, on the subject of fan edits, I've seen some fans try to cut the Star Wars prequels down to something enjoyable, but none of them really succeeded because, as the old saying goes, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. But I am befuddled, gobsmacked, and flabbergasted to tell you that Dustin Lee somehow, someway, has made chicken salad out of chicken shit. I just finished watching his 4-hour cut of the Hobbit trilogy, which he's combined into one film entitled J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, and I have the same feeling that I have when I watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Dustin's cut out a lot of the new unnecessary filler characters, the cartoonish action and comedy moments that weren't in the same tone as the previous trilogy, and the big one, he color corrected it to give it that slight washed out look that the Lord of the Rings trilogy had. Now, some people might not understand the motivation behind decreasing saturation and vibrance, especially in the age of HD, which is all about more color and more detail. But I think a big reason why the Lord of the Rings trilogy is so good is because it looks like a legend. They look old and beat up like a great novel. And just the color correction makes it feel like another chapter in the Middle-earth cinematic saga. So there's also the camp that says it's The Hobbit. It's not supposed to be the same tone as Lord of the Rings. It's a children's story. Look, you're going to tell me they're going to get the same director, the same composer who uses the same themes, some of the same actors, use the same sets, props, costumes, locations, language, and you want to change the tone? Are you serious? No. Just no. You can get away with it in the book, but this is a movie. It's a visual and acoustic experience. For me, the tone must remain consistent. Also, there's a lot of killing in this thing. Don't tell me it's a kid's story. Maybe it was a long time ago, but by today's standards, it's not a bedtime story anymore, and should not be presented as such by any responsible filmmaker. And Dustin did it. By color correcting, taking out the cartoony silly stuff, and cutting out the Hollywood additions like the forced love story, video game-like anti-gravity, and a backstory we didn't really need to see. He's not just salvaged, but finally crafted another installment in the Lord of the Rings saga. Oh yeah, one more thing. Almost no Legolas in this cut. Now don't get me wrong, Legolas is one of my favorite characters in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I felt like his involvement in the Hobbit trilogy was forced. He serves no purpose, he has no story, he's just there because he's a familiar face. Only he's not. The actor Orlando Bloom has noticeably aged, even though he's supposed to be playing basically the same age, and he's wearing much paler blue contact lenses than he did in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Plus, he doesn't even really act like Legolas. He's got this weird, creepy T-1000 vibe going. He was intense in the Lord of the Rings movies, but he was still boyish. In the Hobbit trilogy, he's just a bite in the ass. And while he does do some cool gravity-defying tricks in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, they take it to a ridiculous degree in the Hobbit trilogy. So I was very happy to see it all get cut out. Less is more is definitely the case for Legolas in these films. So he's just been reduced to a cameo now. So yeah, this cut is amazing. This is how I'm going to start my Lord of the Rings marathon every single year from now on. Luckily, the performances were fantastic. Peter Jackson's direction was fantastic. The cinematography was just as beautiful as it was in Lord of the Rings. This cut shows me how Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy ultimately failed in the editing stage. too drawn out, too bright, too flashy, and too far removed from what made the Lord of the Rings film special. Does it still have some problems? Of course it does. So does Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and Return of the King. But the problems that remain with J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit aren't so huge that they take me out of the film like the theatrical or extended cuts of the Hobbit films did. This cut just made me take a big, deep sigh when I was done. And I felt like I had just experienced a grand tale of adventure and magic and friendship. I was completely disconnected when I watched the original versions. But this one, the end of this cut is a lot like the end of the Return of the King cut. It gets pretty dusty. Now, for those who really like the backstory of Gandalf's side quest, Dustin has done a 1-hour cut of that stuff as well. It's called Durin's Folk and the Hill of Sorcery. It's like Tolkien's appendices, which were like deleted scenes for a book. They were taken out of the book for the same reason that deleted scenes are taken out of a film. They take away from a movie's power, from its effectiveness, from its ability to draw a person in, make them connect, make them feel something. I really wish that more people would understand that deleted scenes were deleted for a reason. But unfortunately, a lot of people think that more is better, and they're all about quantity over quality. Deleted scenes and appendices are just curiosities for me. They're interesting to see, but I don't get emotionally invested in them. So it's cool that Dustin cut them all together as an appendice for the Hobbit cut. Watch them after you watch his Hobbit cut. Or don't, you're not really missing anything. Dustin's cut is all about Bilbo Baggins. He brings the focus back on The Hobbit, which is the name of the film. And anything that threatens to take away from the power of Bilbo's journey is removed. And if you think 4 hours is still very long, which it is for me, don't worry, he put an intermission right in the middle of the film. And it's at a perfect spot in the story if you want to stop and pick it up another day, or if you just want to take a few minutes to stretch. Remember, stretch before you conquer. So if you're like me and you own the Hobbit trilogy and don't think it's very precious, go to maple-films.com and click on Hobbit Fan Edit in the top right corner to find out how you can get a copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. A tremendous fan edit that throws out the ultimatums of Hollywood bean counters and instead remains true to the spirit of J.R.R. Tolkien's classic story. Got a question or comment? Scroll down and go to town. And to join the Nerd Tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmaste.